Before we begin this video, remember to like, subscribe and comment down below. I really want to start a discussion with my video, so I care about each and every single comment down there. I will try to reply to them. Also, if you like, you can share this video with whoever you like. Your friends, your family, your pet crocodile, your grandma, your milkman, whoever. There are going to be videos every Monday, so stay tuned for those. But now let's just get back to the actual topic of this video, which is Skyward Sword. So yeah, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD has just come out, and a lot of people have been more positive on it and at the same time more negative on it now that it has re-released, and that is something very interesting to see. I think all of the negativity that I have seen on reviews comes from people comparing it to Breath of the Wild, and I think that is a bit silly. And yes, this video is about comparing those games, but those games just have such a different approach to what they want, kind of an experience they want to deliver. Skyward Sword is much more like narrative driven, while it's a linear adventure where you go from place to place in that order, while Breath of the Wild is much more about freedom and exploration. And those games are like basically the opposites when compared to each other. They do completely different things, even though Skyward Sword is the predecessor to Breath of the Wild, and definitely has a lot of similar mechanics and of course lots of ideas that first came to the series in Skyward Sword, and now that they have been applied to the open world context of Breath of the Wild, can they like truly flourish? The best example of this is of course the sailcloth, which is given to you in Skyward Sword early game, and does help you from like not dying when falling a few times, but it's not really that useful. But when applied to the context of Breath of the Wild, it's one of the most useful items in that game, at least in my opinion. But today I'm going to go over a few things that Skyward Sword does better than Breath of the Wild. And the first one being, of course, the story of the game. Skyward Sword, as I said, is all about the narrative, all about the lore, and it is a narrative-driven game, while Breath of the Wild focuses more on exploration and kinda falls short on some aspects of the story. Not saying the Breath of the Wild story is bad, but most of like the interesting stuff happens before the game even begins, with the whole war against Calamity Ganon and gathering all of the heroes. What were they called again? But yeah, there's a reason why they made Age of Calamity, which basically goes over what happened 100 years ago as a different game. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's canon because the stuff happens in it. And also the pacing in Breath of the Wild can sometimes be a bit not so good because it is an open world game, so stuff just happens and then they all come together in the end. But the story in Skyward Sword is much better in my opinion. They have much more better like dialogue, better characters, all these kind of twists and turns in the story. It's not the best story ever written, it's not the best story in the Zelda series, but it's definitely, I think, better than Breath of the Wild. And the story in Skyward Sword is basically about the first hero in the Triforce lineage, where the legend of Zelda really begins. Before Ganondorf, before all that kind of stuff. And then you have like the creation of the Master Sword, really important item to the Zelda series. So it's a really important game for lore and for people who care about the lore of the Zelda franchise, or people who want to know more about the ongoing story in the Zelda series. It's definitely a must play. Okay, the second thing that Skyward Sword does better, in my opinion, is the characters. That I already mentioned, I guess, but Breath of the Wild had also some good, interesting characters, but they were like tucked away. They were tucked away because they were either one dead, or like some of them were really one note but kind of interesting, like Pura and Robbie. They just appeared in one location. You can talk to them a few times, and that's it. And all of the champions, that's what they were called. Yes, now I remember. They're all dead when the game begins. They were interesting characters, but you don't really explore your connection to them because you only have optional memories of them that you can chase after. So the story kind of falls apart on that aspect. And Zelda is, you hear her in the beginning, but she's like nowhere to be seen. You don't really spend much time with her. But in Skyward Sword, this is definitely not the case. The characters have more time to grow, go over like a character arc. You can interact with them. You can do side quests that are related to them. The stories is related to them. They get involved with the story better that is going on, and it just has a lot of cool characters. My favorites are Fi. Yes, I do like Fi. I think she is an interesting character. A lot of people do not like her because she interrupts the gameplay so much. But if that has thankfully been toned down in the HD re-release, so a lot of people have more like time to experience what Fi really has to say. And if you read her dialogue, she begins as this non-emotional robotic person, but then starts getting a little bit more personality and a little bit more interesting as the game goes on. That is really interesting to see. Groose is fun. Hated him in the beginning, but he really grows on you. He's like the bully in the academy that Link is studying in, and he has a crush on Zelda, but Zelda is not really into him, and Zelda's of course into Link, and the relationship between Zelda and Link is like the best in the series. I love that. And then Groose becomes friends with Link in the story of the game. Zelda's dad is also, I think he was the principal in the academy or whatever. And he's a cool character too. He's like a really understanding father figure, which is something we don't always see in Zelda games. And also it's good that, well, the king or the principal isn't like this.
My boy!
So it's wonderful. Then Girahim, one of my favorite villains in the Zelda series. It's just he's just fun to watch and really fun to fight against as well. So there's definitely lots of cool characters, all of the people in Skyloft, and lots of cool characters you can get to know, much more so than in Breath of the Wild. Next up is dungeons, and Breath of the Wild, one of the things it was really criticized for was the dungeons in the game. The dungeons in Breath of the Wild, they all have like the similar theme, similar core mechanics in them, so they can get like really boring and they are very similar to each other. But Skyward Sword couldn't be different from that. All of the dungeons are unique. Some of them have like very unique takes on them. Some of them have like the best bosses in Zelda history. A lot of cool items that you get in the game. By the way, if you would like to see a video on what items should return in Breath of the Wild 2, check out my last video on the Zelda series. Right here, somewhere. But yes, that said, Skyward Sword has a lot of cool dungeons. My favorites are, of course, the Ancient Cistern and also the Sand Ship. And I just think they are very clever in mechanics, very clever in theming, very cool stuff. Ancient Cistern has, in my opinion, one of the best dungeon bosses in Zelda series, and the Sand Ship has a lot, this very cool like mini boss, that mid boss in the dungeon. I just love that. That should have been the actual boss of the dungeon. But yes, that said, dungeons in Skyward Sword, so good, so good. Definitely better than in Breath of the Wild. Okay, number 4 is all of the locations. While Breath of the Wild, of course, does locations better in the aspect of exploration, the locations in Skyward Sword are just so much more interesting from a concept level. There's so many cool things they do, like with the desert, they have this really cool time travel mechanic there, and Farron Woods is awesome, especially during the second time you really have to go there, when there's like a lot of water around. The Silent Realm, I loved it. Every time you could go to the Silent Realm, it was so much fun, and I just love how the place looks. It's so scary looking, it's so dead and hollow, and I just love it. The Thunderhead was very interesting, and of course, like the pirate ship and the surrounding areas are just like, while being in the desert, they come like really beautiful looking, and that is one of the places I look forward to revisiting the most when I have the game in HD. And it's just like, it looks stunning, and this is something they definitely do better than in Breath of the Wild. While they have like really cool locations, they go for more like kind of realistic, not so unique aspects to them. Of course, Skyward Sword has a lot more room to play around because it's so linear, narrative driven game. But still, the locations in Skyward Sword are just awesome. Skyloft too. Skyloft is cool too. There's lots of cool stuff you can discover there. Beetle Shop is very fun, and all of the little cool islands you can visit too. Even the pumpkin restaurant it's just very charming. But that is all from me. Overall, I do still prefer Breath of the Wild just because of the exploration aspect and the open world, but Skyward Sword definitely feels a different kind of niche. Well, not really niche, it's a very popular game, but it fills different boots, I would say. It's meant for a different kind of experience, and the experience that they offer is very linear but still like very enjoyable. But now I want to know, what do you guys think? Are you going to get the Skyward Sword HD game? Are you looking forward to Breath of the Wild 2? What do you think about comparing these two games, and what do you think is better? And what other things does Skyward Sword do better? Let me know down in the comments below. But for now, I have nothing to say. Remember to subscribe and like this video once again, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.